Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Elsevier Engineering series for spring 2022. We hope that you and those near and dear to you are all safe and well. Today's session is a roundtable discussion with some of my customer consultant colleagues who are experts on knowledge management. We'll be discussing challenges and opportunities that they've seen in building research cultures. And before we get started with that, I just wanted to point out that if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A, and we will get to them with time permitting at the end of the session. We're going to launch our first poll. There'll be two polls. The first one is just to help us identify who's attending today's session. So if you just take a few seconds and help us identify who you are, we'll be very grateful. Okay, see that we've got a couple of people are responding to our poll questions. And so just a couple more seconds will end that. And I want to thank you for answering that for us. So I'd like to introduce my three colleagues who've joined me today, Chris Cogswell, Kim Pierce, and Walter Koto. And would you please give us a little bit of your background, your path to Elsevier, and the customers that you work with in your customer consultant role?
Sure. I can go ahead and go first. So, hey everyone, my name is Chris Cogswell. I am a PhD in chemical engineering. So I got a bachelor's in chemical engineering from the University of New Hampshire, and then a PhD in chemical engineering from Northeastern University. Also have a bachelor's in philosophy, so a bit of a weird path through academia for me. Before joining Elsevier, I worked in the petrochemical consulting space, working on kinetics and environmental dispersions and process safety events. So I'll pass it along to Kim.
Thanks, Chris. I'm Kim Pierce. I have my undergraduate degree in international studies with a focus on geopolitical issues. And I graduated into the recession, so I bounced around a little bit at first, mainly working for nonprofits. So for example, I worked as an event planner at the Columbia University Club of New York. Happily, I was able to use my degree and start working at a committee for human and women's rights at the UN. And then a few years into the workforce, I decided to go back to school, and I got a master's in marine conservation and policy and a graduate certificate in geospatial science. And with that, I started working as a researcher, primarily focused on the implications of climate change to coastal communities and with doing seagrass restoration. So I wound up being recruited off of LinkedIn, of all places, to work for Elsevier. And now I work with teaching and learning focused academic accounts and small corporations as a customer consultant. So, Walter?
Hey, so thanks for the introduction. So for me, I actually am an industrial engineer by training, and most of my actual, workforce background is more mechanical engineering focused. I worked with electric motors, with lube oil systems, seal systems, and in the energy industry or oil and gas industry, depending on where you are, how you want to call it. And then I kind of did a 180 into tech, where actually, believe it or not, in tech, I used some of my industrial engineering background, like the Six Sigma, and just learning and understanding processes and ways to optimize them, and then trying to automate those processes to save our customers time. Now here at Elsevier, it's kind of like in the middle ground between those two, where I'm working with a lot of our customers as a consultant, especially the academic accounts here on the West Coast, and bringing some of that engineering knowledge into it as well. So that's me in a nutshell. So I'll pass it back over to Mark.
Thank you. Thank you. Really nice, diverse background mix between the three of you. So let's start things off in reflecting back on your academic years. Did you spend any or lots of time reading scientific papers? Walter, can you start us off?
Yeah, no, definitely. So I did not spend a lot of time looking through scientific papers. I had a tech writing class pretty early on in my studies. I think it might have been like either sophomore or my freshman year. And there I learned a little bit about research, but not really a lot. But I never actually learned about standards, which is what I used the most when I went into the industry. So I think that was an area that I wasn't too keen on. I didn't really understand how that worked while I was in school.
Chris, what was your experience?
Yeah, I had a similar experience to Walter, I'd say generally. So it's funny. I probably read more academic journal articles as a philosophy student than I ever did as a chemical engineer as an undergrad. So I became really, I guess, aware that there were scientific papers out there to read, or I guess really exposed to them as a senior chemical engineering student. And I did a lot of undergraduate research too in both departments. So as a undergraduate researcher in chemical engineering, I was sort of given papers to read to learn about the stuff that we were presenting on at conferences and the work that we were doing. But really, I think before grad school, I probably read a total of maybe 3 or 4 scientific papers.
Wow. Okay, so I'm understanding between those two answers that there was either none or very little reading of scientific papers. Do you think that was a reflection more on lack of awareness of research tools at the university level?
It's interesting because at the University of New Hampshire, where I went to school, we were exposed to them, but as seniors in the engineering department. So I had a course that was taught by every engineer has like a senior design course. And so in my senior design course, the first week was spent with the library and with people internally talking about how to find research information, because the problem we had to solve, in our case, it was distilling non-alcoholic beer or producing non-alcoholic beer, which as an adult now, I think seems like a little bit of a waste. But anyways, the idea was we should learn how to do this kind of work and learn how to do this research. But, again, senior design, it kind of comes a year before you graduate. You already probably have a job at that point, hopefully, or at least an idea of what your next step is. It kind of felt like a little too little too late. Right.
Yeah.
So it was introduced through coursework, but that was where it was introduced. And that was really the most, I think, that was why I started looking at the tools. So I don't know if it was awareness as much as it was just timing. If they introduced them earlier, I think we would have probably used them more.
So awareness, somewhat a challenge. Do you know of any unique ways that libraries, knowledge centers have raised the awareness that they exist for students? Kim, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So in my experience, awareness was primarily driven by faculty. So for example, I had one professor who would offer extra credit for going to the library and using a selected resource that week to do a search. And the database that we were supposed to be using and topic changed each time. And so that was really the primary way that I was learning about library resources. And there wasn't really a required class or even a class that was an elective to take that focused on the research strategy or information sciences. And so what I'm finding in this role with Elsevier is that there seems to be this misconception that since current students are digital natives, that they know how to find and utilize information correctly and effectively. And honestly, they don't. There's been some really interesting ways to find information that I've seen when working with some students. And a lot of them are in this place where they're having basically a research trial by fire and figuring things out as they fail. And in my opinion, we are it's really to everyone's detriment that we're not focusing more on teaching about library resources and basic research techniques.
Thanks. So, I'm hearing kind of a lack of skills. And Walter, I'm going to turn to you and say, when you transitioned from university into the workplace, did you feel like woefully unprepared as you
So
entered into the workplace?
I have a pretty funny story about that. So like I said, when I was in school, I wasn't too familiar with standards. And then the first day at work, my boss handed me a binder about yay thick, maybe 3 pounds, and told me, hey, look over that. It's standards and specifications. Highlight what you think is important. And I honestly, I went home that day. I did not know where to start. I started Googling certain things, but you can't really find information too well, when you Google that, like, especially when it comes to standards, right? So I was super lost. And it took me a while to kind of get used to that. I think Kim mentioned like trial by fire. Essentially, that's how it felt. You're slowly learning. And then, to make things worse is at my job, like everything was super siloed. So the first thing was, if I have a specification that refers to a standard, I have to go to somebody's cubicle to find, what that means, and next on top of that, we had some shared folders, but you literally had like 100 PDFs on that folder, and you have to like, go eat one by one. It just takes a long time. So, I felt like I wasn't prepared like I should have been at the beginning. It took me a while to really get up to speed and to really learn what I was supposed to be doing as an engineer at that point.
So, Chris, were you doing cubicle research when you went into the workforce?
It was. Yeah, it's funny. I think Walter really as far as I can tell, that is the story across the board for every single new engineer, that you show up to your workplace for the first time and they hand you a big folder full of stuff and they say, read this and get to know it really well. And then you kind of are left alone for like 2 weeks where you read this stuff and try to memorize it. And then finally, you're maybe ready to start doing some work. So the place I worked as a consultant too, so and a safety consultant at that. So the work that I did really required good information, and especially in the realm of safety, you can think, if you knew enough information about a situation beforehand, one would hope that you would not allow that unsafe situation to happen, right? That if you could see it coming, you would have, and so you would have prepared. But what we often found at a lot of these customers that we were consulting with, and even in the company that I was working in, there wasn't a lot of information available to the users or the workers. And that led to safety events, that led to challenges or cases where when a safety event happened, they were kind of left flat-footed, which is why they came to the company that I worked for. Right. So we definitely, I think, both as a new hire to the company and even a company that knew the value of good information, it was always hard to find that stuff. And honestly, Walter talks about the cubicles that you'd go to. That's absolutely true. We had kind of thought leaders that we would go to. So there was one guy who knew everything.
Yeah.
And if that guy was sick that day, you were in trouble.
Yeah, or if he left the company, right?
Yeah,
took the knowledge with him right out the door.
Exactly. So it's an interesting thing that you leave school and you think, well, I'm ready for the workforce. And you get to the workforce and you find out, no, you're not ready. You're not ready at all.
Okay, so as consultants to libraries, librarians, and knowledge centers, do you find that they use unique ways to raise awareness or promote research tools, anywhere, whether it's in academia, in government, or in corporate environments? I'll just tell you, I've got a couple of my customers in the corporate world who actually use training session recordings that I do as part of the onboarding for new hires. So they become aware of the tools, but they also learn how to use them. So I was just wondering if you have experience with other unique ways in onboarding new hires to make them aware and use tools. Kim, do you want to start us off on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's been instances with some of the accounts I work for that there's a lack of research knowledge and it's keeping them from being really effective. So there's one corporate account that was really struggling with users not being aware of how to search for patents and standards content. So what we did was we worked with them to put together this introductory training to show people, what patents are, how to search for them. And it was just very needled into using patents and standards. And so those videos and PowerPoints became part of their new onboarding process for anyone that they were hiring. And they also were using it as refreshers for employees that wanted to take their skills to the next level. And there's also a school that I was working with that had a super unique way of increasing the visibility of the library and getting students engaged. And so what they did was they opened their makerspace, and they opened it to the public for a fee and had a group of students run that space and teach the community how to utilize those tools. And so they were able to, educate beyond the campus, but in doing so, they were generating an income for that library so that they could then go and buy more resources that they could then train students of. And it was, chef's kiss, a beautiful solution that they had going, where it was just a positive feedback loop of being able to get more resources that they could then educate people on and educate the community. So it was really
Wow,
nice.
great program. Yeah. Okay, so what are some of the best practices that you see your customers utilizing to develop research skills, particularly when they bring new hires on board, so that they feel well supported and aware that they've got the support system and all this knowledge that in most times is centralized in the library. So what are some of the best practices you're experiencing from that? Chris, you want to start us off there, please?
Sure, yeah. So I honestly think the best thing you can do is start early. When someone comes into the company, make researching information and finding information part of what they do every day. So we have a lot of customers that I work with who we've now developed a close enough relationship working together that we've kind of integrated each other into the I guess I should say they've integrated me. They've been nice enough to invite me in to their introductory training sessions and new hire onboarding process. So when new hires come into the company, we do training sessions with them where we talk about, okay, well, this is how you look for a standard. This is how you find context around that information. This is how you find reference works. And this is how you find journal articles that'll fit the needs of what you're looking for. And these are some of the tools that we have available to you. And then the library will come in and talk about the tools that they make available generally. Talking about some of that and really digging into why it is you should use these tools, what it means to have good search methods and hygiene, right? Like how most students entering the workforce don't know they don't know how to find the difference between a good journal that is reputable and has likely trustworthy information versus say like a white paper or something someone posted on a blog. And that's a big difference, and it really has an effect. So even just simple skills like that, and bringing in those good search hygiene skills and methods early enough into their career that it becomes something that you're not retraining someone to do, but you're just making it like, this is what we do here. This is how we find information. This is why we think it's important. Starting early is, I think, the best piece of advice I can give. And it's what I found to be the most effective so far as well.
Great points, Chris. So you mentioned in there that you've worked with customers, both corporate and universities, where you do topic-specific focused sessions for them. Walter, is that something that, and Kim, is that something that you also provide and offer your customers, and so people can learn more?
Yeah, no, we definitely do. And we customize it really depending on what the customer is looking for, right? So in the academic space, one thing that has gotten a lot of traction has become pretty popular, especially with COVID, everybody working remote or studying remote. One of the main things that we did was career focused workshops, where essentially we talked about some of the main skills that companies are looking for in new engineers, right? What are some of these skills, soft skills, maybe learning about other engineering areas, right? Becoming a T-shaped engineer, essentially. And students are interested in this, but at the same time we're able to introduce them to products that can help them become a better researcher, both while in school and then after graduating, right? We want to make sure that the students become a more attractive possible employee for the companies out there. And that's kind of what we focus. Now, if we're speaking to undergrads or graduates, the focus changes slightly. But if we're speaking to faculty and they want to train and train the trainer, we do those as well. So it really depends on what the customers are looking for. But the idea behind it, and usually the focus is how can we better prepare our users for industry?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. To Walter's point, the T-shaped engineer was really popular, and people do ask for that training quite often. But we also host, the webinar series where, it's not always about getting published in engineering or how to utilize databases, but one of our most popular webinars was about the zombie apocalypse and how to use scientific knowledge to engineer your way into survival in the apocalypse. So can't always be about career and moving forward. We do try to have a little bit of fun as well, because that's where you get people to pay more attention, is where you meet them on their level. So one of my colleagues had been working on a Spider-Man themed spider silk review as well. So anytime there's an interest, we can customize what people would like to present to their students, or in their corporations. And quite honestly, it's the administrators and the librarians that are going to have their finger on the pulse of what their community is interested in. So we're always open to suggestions on that as well.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So I'm sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I'm looking at the clock, and we've really covered a lot of ground, and the ideas I thought were just excellent. So thank you all for that. But you know what, I'm going to give you an opportunity, or ask you if you just kind of, I'm going to frame it as a closing statement, but if you just kind of share some parting words of knowledge for our audience, whether they're users or librarians or knowledge centers. And I'm going to start off with you, Kim, if you wouldn't mind.
Thanks. So I, in closing, would say, when in doubt, reach out. So we might not be able to solve every issue you have, or, fill every need that you're looking to solve, but we can at least find the correct person to connect you with. And we're always here to brainstorm solutions with you. So don't be afraid to contact us whenever you're looking for some of that additional support.
Okay, Walter?
Yeah, I think one thing that I want to add to that too is that we are also another resource that you have at your fingertips. If you need help with anything, we're here to help. One of the things that a lot of my customers really found was challenging, especially during COVID, was connecting with their user base. And last year, using things like the T-shaped engineer and using other workshops that are popular, we were able to bridge the gap in certain places, between that, even in the virtual or remote world that we live in. But we want to continue to do that. Reach out to us. We are a resource. We're more than happy to help. Like I said, any kind of training, any kind of really consulting of any sort, we're happy to help. And we'll get you in touch, either if we can't help, with the right person.
Chris, you want to bring us home, please?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything my colleagues said. Of course, they're two very smart people, so of course I agree with them. I think really I think a lot of the times, because we're representatives of a company, people think that we're there only to sell you things. And really, our role as customer consultants, it's interesting. I almost think of us as extensions of your library team, of your information services team. We're supposed to be there to offer help and guidance, and really be able to help you brainstorm and maybe shoot ideas back and forth on ways we can help improving these things like a research culture and building effective strategies to communicate with people internally, and really make sure that your users, your people that are your internal customers are seeing the value of what you provide, and also seeing the value of having this good research structure in place. So I really like to think that the times that we've been the most successful have been the times where we've really been able to collaborate with our customers. And so I'll just reiterate what everyone said. We are always available to help with trainings, to help with set up events. And again, really, if you think about it, we've been to, the three of us in total have probably been to over 200 different research institutions of various sorts, and seen how they're doing their development of research culture, their development of these kind of research strategies and hygiene internally. We are a good resource for you, we hope. And so, please collaborate with us. Just reach out. We're very nice, and we're happy to travel anywhere.
Well, thank you all three for your great insights and for sharing so much of what you do and how you can help people. So for our audience, I'm going to launch a poll with a couple of questions here. And while I launch that poll, I'll also be looking to share the upcoming session. So if you just take a minute or two to a second or two to share that, we'd appreciate it. Our next session is coming up on March 24th, and we'll be looking at uncovering fossils and the biggest hole and other fossil tales. So do be sure to register for that. If you want to know where to register, please reach out to your customer consultant or send me an email, and we'll be happy to get you that registration. And then also, if you want a recording, any of the recordings, we've done over 40 webinars now. Please do go to YouTube, where you can look for Elsevier for Engineering and download those. So we've got just a couple of minutes left here. I want to see if there's any questions in the Q&A. So yeah, there's a couple here. How do I know what research tools my university, or I'm going to add /company, has? This was asked from the university level, but I'll also throw in, Kim, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So there's a number of ways where you can find that out. First would be, look at your library website. So generally academic institutions will have on their websites a list of databases that they subscribe to. Some will also have subject guides where you can then go per subject that you're researching in or studying in. And it'll tell you the resources there that are useful to you. And they'll usually also have a contact that you can reach out to for additional guidance. So that would be the first place. If that's overwhelming and there's too many resources, or you're just not finding what you're looking for, you can also ask your professors. They're oftentimes doing research as well, so they'll be able to guide you. On the company level, there's usually someone who's tasked as a data manager who could point you in that direction. Some corporations also have a library and library website on their interfaces internally. So that's a good resource. Or if you're really stuck, you could also reach out to HR. And if they don't have a list of the resources available to you, you can find out from them who's in charge of that at your organization. So that would be the very first place I would suggest starting.
Thanks, Kim. Question number 2, are research skills important when going into industry? Walter, you want to take that one?
Okay. Yeah, that's right up my alley. So Yeah, no, they definitely are. I think, it can be a little bit underrated, right? Like soft skills, you don't really think about them while you're going to school, but
Mhm.
they are skills that are become very important, especially when you think about it. When you go in an industry, you might be responsible for hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars worth of decision making power, essentially, right? When you make those decisions, what kind of journals are you basing your answers from, right? Can you trust that information or can you not? And you get those are things you got to think about. So having those research skills, knowing where I can trust, where I cannot trust the information, that is a key part of becoming a successful engineer overall.
Well, again, thank you all for this very insightful session. Thank you for your answers here, and thank you to our audience for attending today's session. We hope you found it valuable, helpful, and thank you for your polling questions. And again, if you have any questions or needs, please do reach out to your customer consultants. We're all here to help you. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.